Okay, in today's lecture, we're going to walk through a challenge together. It's called the mute button. Let's walk through a challenge called mute button together. The main purpose of this app is to teach us about React props and state, which we kind of walk through the previous challenges as well. So I'm going to go into mute button. Oh, geez, what happened? Mute button. Fork this over. Just happened. Fork to my repo. Git clone. And git clone and npm or npx install React app mute button. I did that right here. ls, this mute button. Let's open this up in the current window. So in mute button, we have a couple of icons. Let's just kind of read. Okay, it looks like we have a couple icons, on, off, SVG. Don't know what that means right now. Walk through it. Releases, continuing our exploration, handling interactions and events in React. We'll now create a simple UI, but without input elements. And in addition to learning how to handle click events, you also learn how to utilize SVGs in React apps. Okay, create release run, release 0, create the React scaffolding, release render on SVG image from the icons directly and attach to an on-click event listener. When the image is clicked, toggle it to the off image and vice versa. So just like when you're muting a like your Spotify or any muting, it's going to have like a little speaker with the X through it or the cross through it. So mute button, to summarize, original README, we're trying to toggle between two different images on the page on a user's click. Images can be found in the icons folder, so let's kind of walk through this. So here's our mute button app. Let's open this up and cd into mute button and npm start. Start the server and start walking through it. There it is. So look at our app. So here's our function component called app. We can delete all this. Oh, just this. We need a single div wrapped when we return. So essentially, I just want to create, let's do div and testing. See what that looks like. Testing. And when I click this div, I want it to do something. So app.js logo is not, so I don't need this logo anymore. Get rid of unnecessary assets. When I click on here, I essentially want it to toggle on and off or true or false. So since we're using functional components, let's create like an initial state called is muted. With the general, we want to create like a mute button, whether it's muted or not. So const is muted. It's going to be return a Boolean value. Set is muted equals use state, and right now set it to false. And we need to import use state from React. Use state is a hook that sets the state in a functional component. Returns two values. One is the current value of state, is muted. Right now it's false, as well as another returns also a function that enables us to mutate state. And you can only mutate state if you run this function. Okay, so we have, let's just console log. Console log is muted. Oh no, user state, that always happens. Use state user state. Set state is assigned, is never used. Great. Refresh. Here's our initial state, which is false. So in this, on this div, when I click on the div, I want to execute a function that changes this is muted from false to true. And when I click it again, I want it to change from true to false and vice versa. So it toggles on and off. So I can add an on-click event listener and say like toggle mute. Toggle mute is not defined. So in here, I need to declare toggle mute. Toggle mute is a function. Which a console log is muted. See what happens. Look at it, refresh, and here, so every time I'm clicking on it, it just returns false because that's the current state of is muted. So I want to mutate this is muted by using the set is muted, which I can do like an if statement, like if is muted equals false. Oops, there's Python. Set is muted to true. Else set is muted to false. Let's see what it looks like now. And I can actually like console log is muted. False, true. So it's toggling, but we can do this in a much shorter way. We can just do set is muted to the opposite of the current value of is muted. So if the current value of muted is false, which it is, it's going to set it to the opposite of that, which is going to be true. And console log is muted. Just make sure. True. There we go. I think it's only because this isn't executed right away. Actually, let's do this up here. So it's initially false, now it's true, false, true, false, true. The reason why this is continuously consoling because every time state changes, the entire component re-renders or reloads, re-renders. Great. Now, what can we do? We're going to want to create a mute button that displays these icons. So let's look. Let's create a mute button. So we got to create components. And let's create a mute button. Let's create another buttons folder. And let's create a mute button component. Create a stateless component. I'm sorry, a functional component. It's currently stateless. And I want to render this is muted, question mark. Let's see what this looks like. So nothing's, so in here, I've got this toggle, click. So I'm gonna want to, let's just render is muted, I'm sorry, mute button, and And it automatically imports it at the very top for me. And let's look at what it renders. Is muted. Yes. So, and I want to pass in some props. So I want to pass in the is muted state equals is muted. And that's what I want to render right now. Let's see if it is. So I need to, so I'm passing in, change that, let's go over here. So I've got this mute button on the right and our parent component on the left, app. App is our parent component, mute button is our child component. I'm only able to pass props down from the parent to the child. And I'm currently passing is muted. The current state of our parent is muted. I'm passing it down as a prop called is muted. I need to take in props in our child component. I'm just going to console log is muted. Is muted is not defined, so I want to console log props. Right there, is muted is false. And what else do I want to? So I want to actually be able to click here and change some stuff. If this is so I want to be able to pass in this toggle mute button. So when I click is muted, I want it to be, so let's just look at props.isMuted. So it doesn't show up because true or false, like if it's true and false, they actually don't show up in JSX. So I can do like props.isMuted. So if that's true, like true, render h1 true, else h1 false. See if that works. So right now it's false. So I want to be able to click something. Like I want to be able to click this true and false and have it change. So how can we do this? So we have this toggle mute. We can actually pass functions down as well. So instead of having an on click, we can do toggle mute property. We're passing down this toggle mute function. So let's look what's being passed down in props. So I'm not only passing down the current state is muted, I'm also passing down this function toggle mute here and calling it toggle mute into our mute button. So props, console logging props. Let's see what props looks like. Props, which is muted is false, and we have this toggle mute method. Set is muted, not is muted. So just like in this H1, I can do like on click equals props.toggle mute. See if this works. Not quite sure. So no errors. So I'm passing in from props. So I'm passing in is muted and toggle mute into in the props down to the mute button functional component. And then I'm rendering, so doing a ternary operator right here. If props is muted is true, render this H1 tag true. If it's false, render this h1 tag and display false. And I'm also passing an onClick handler in here that is grabbing the toggle mute button, or the toggle mute property, which is this toggle mute function that's being passed down from the app component. Instead of h1s, I'm going to do divs. Let's see if this works. So right now it's false, true, false, true. Look at that. And look at right here, it's re-rendering. Cool. And let's see if this is going to console log is muted. I'm going to get rid of this console. Refresh. So even app.js is re-rendering. So what I'm actually doing is re-rendering this state from the child component. Cool. So when I'm passing down this toggle mute method as a property to the mute button component, passing it as a prop, and then I'm executing it or invoking it when I'm on this onClick event handler, toggle mute. So let's do a little. So we pretty much have it. Now we just have to use the icons. So we have these icons, SVG icons. Let's bring those into the source folder and import those into here. Import on icon from, it's got to go up 1, 2. So it's in here, goes up 1, up 2, into icons. And then it's called on SVG. And then we can do it off SVG, off icon. So now how do we actually render the icons? We pretty much have the logic here. We just have to change this stuff to display icon. So let's use for image SVG images in React. Image tag in React. Images in React. Return image. That's kind of big. So it looks like image has a source where that image is from. So we can do like image source, then just on, so on icon, and we can do alt. We need an alt tag on, and then get rid of that. It's false. Instead of on icon, we can do off icon. Alt tag is off. No errors, that's always good. Look at our React app. So it's currently off, so here's our little, actually do like a empty div with style, margin, 100 pixels. There we go. So it's a little bit in the middle of the screen now. So when I click on this, it should change. There we go, true, false. Great. Now let's do a talk about destructure. So instead of passing in props and writing props dot all the time, we can destructure and grab is muted as well as toggle mute. And now we can get rid of this is muted, or the props dot. Restructure it there. Refresh it. Cool, worked. So right now we're using functional components. Let's refactor and use class-based components. So let's just move everything to class-based. Actually, let's keep mute button as a class, I'm sorry, as a functional component, and let's change this app to a class-based component. Functional. So in order to do that, we do class, so class app extends component, import this component up here, component, do state equals is muted, initially false. Take care. Toggle mute, you can get rid of the const, it's console log. You also need to return this, or the last function in a class component is the render, which returns everything we want. Returns all the JSX. So is muted, the set is muted. We need to do this dot set state, because in class components, the only way to mutate state is to invoke the set state function is muted. Equals the opposite of this dot state dot is muted. And then we need this dot state dot is muted, and this dot toggle, whoop, sorry. This dot toggle mute. So the class we declared state is muted. Toggle is an arrow function. We want to change the state. We call this dot set state, which accepts an object, which is the current state is muted. This, which is the value of that is the opposite of the current value of is muted. So the opposite of this dot state dot is muted. And we're still passing in everything the same. It is muted and toggle mute as props. We don't need to do like this, because that's not, we can type to make this anything. Pass it in. Anything. We're not going to do that. Just, oh, shoot. Let's see if this still works. Refresh. There we go. And if we want to console log the state, we can't declare variables, so this is a class. Operates just like a normal class. We can't be like const something like const some variable. Can't do that. Like 10 or 9. It's going to throw it, parsing out unexpected token. But we can do that in the render function, because render is literally just like any other function. You can declare variables in it whenever we want. So we can console log in here, call console log the state, this dot state dot is muted. Let's see. So right now it's false. Now it's true, false, true, false, true. Everything else is the same. So, and I'm going to stop the recording right there.